We have a sector that actually has a lot of planning permission to build student accommodation, but what we've also had is market failure. It hasn't made sense, it hasn't been viable for the colleges to build. And as a state, and hands up, we have never invested public funds in building student accommodation.
In this Dublin city centre flat, 10 foreign students sharing 2 bedrooms, 1 tiny living space, 1 shower, virtually no space for storage or to cook or to wash and dry clothes.
Ireland already had a housing shortage before the war in Ukraine began. The pressure on accommodation, which is already at a maximum, prompted these recent exchanges in the Irish Parliament.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. Welcome to yet another video. Lately, I have been receiving a lot of messages from students looking for accommodation. So I was almost compelled to come online and speak about it, share my views. You would already know that there is a housing crisis in this country, in Ireland, going on for the past few years. I have noticed this since 2018 because back then I lived in a sharing accommodation, which most of the students usually, prefer to do. So I lived in such an arrangement and I was paying about 500 euros in 2018. The very same room today, August 22, 2022, is advertised for 900 euros. That means the rent has gone up by 100 euros every year. So in 4 years, it has reached 900 euros. So 100 euros and 500 euros is almost 25% or 20%. So it's safe to say that student housing and student accommodation costs are going up at a rate of 20% per year. Now, this may not be true in all circumstances. I mean, the location of the place, the location of the accommodation would have a major say. So this might not be true for every place across Ireland, but usually that is the trend. 10 to 20% is the region in which the accommodation prices are rising up.
So any accommodation that is available in Galway is priced massively. The accommodation that NUIG is currently building at the minute is priced at €800 per bedroom. So I just think it's absolutely ridiculous because NUIG can't be saying that we're accepting students, and once normal working class families move up here, they realise that they can't afford to be putting food on the table after rent. They can't afford to be putting the work that they want to into their degree because they have to be working full time in order to afford these crazy rents.
But what is exactly the reason for this? One of the major ones being the war in Ukraine. Since the war has begun, Ireland has accepted over 40,000 Ukrainian refugees. And where have they housed these refugees? It has happened in hotels, in hostels, in sponsored accommodations by homeowners, on-campus student accommodations, long-term student hostels, and places as such. So it was natural that the community that was directly going to be impacted was the student community. And that is exactly what's happened. As a result, there is this huge gap between demand and supply. Once again, it was already a problem. It was already a crisis. The problem has, become bigger now. But when you think about it, it's necessary. I mean, where else will those people go? Now, you can't expect help from countries like India. I'm mentioning India because I'm Indian. India won't be taking any refugees. I mean, there is such a crisis in the country itself. And this is the problem with most of the developing countries. So even though Ireland is not developed, I mean, Ireland is a rich country owing to the favorable corporate tax policies that were put in place, which generated a lot of revenue for the country. But it has not really been invested in the infrastructure. I mean, if you look at housing, if you look at healthcare, if you look at the amount of imports that the country is dependent on, I mean, you can't really say that it's a very developed country. However, it is still part of the European Union and it has responsibilities towards people in sufferings. So that's something that really cannot be remedied by, denying people coming into the country. So, however, this has resulted in the student community taking a hit. And hence we are looking at this huge increase in cost of accommodation for students.
There are between 400 and 600 Ukrainian refugees currently being housed in student accommodation on the campus, and hundreds more are expected in the coming weeks.
We already know of students who live in their cars, who live in hostels, those who commute from really far distances.
Living with 6 people in bunk beds with a single ensuite bathroom, I find this totally unacceptable, and especially for first years coming into Galway for the first time, it's definitely a tough time for them.
Now I know people watching this video would be international students or aspiring international students, but the crisis is for the local students as well. A lot of people who live across Ireland move to cities like Dublin, Cork, Limerick, Galway, where all these big universities are. These days, Waterford is coming up as a university city. So a lot of people, a lot of students are moving there to pursue higher education. However, they're also facing problems securing accommodations. Like there are certain number of people, I was reading this report on RTE earlier, and they have published these I would say horror stories from students who have been looking for almost a year and still not being able to secure accommodation. For example, there was a student who was living in a B&B, in a bread and breakfast for an entire semester last year, but this year he was told to vacate because there's a lot of shortage of hotel rooms as well. So if you, just look up hotels in Dublin, the prices have shot through the roof. It's really appalling. And this is not just limited to accommodation. The overall cost of living, the cost of heating your homes, the cost of energy, the cost of filling your car. All of this has just gone up in a very bad way. It's just so much. The worst part of all of this is certain companies are making huge profits at the expense of common people. And sadly, so far, there has been no intervention from the government. Take example of this housing and accommodation crisis. Since 4 years, I've been here 4 years, and from the very first year, one thing that I've consistently noticed is the discussion around this housing crisis. Like, how should the government tackle this, and what are the steps should be taken? And that discussion is still ongoing.
Housing for All is a step change in the government's involvement in the provision of housing for our people. Building homes will require a vibrant and innovative construction sector.
We're also working to scale up the number of people working in the construction sector, and we will increase education and training opportunities, including apprenticeships for those interested in such a career.
There are no results, there are no policies being implemented, and it doesn't look like things will improve in the coming future as well. People at every level are affected by this, but I am here just talking about students who are affected with it as well. In the beginning of the year, I myself was very optimistic, but since then, certain things have changed. And I could have never imagined that we'll be looking at a problem that has no solution. Now, I can't really tell you what the solution is, or I can't even tell you anymore how to go about looking for accommodation, because there's just so many people out there. The competition is fierce for finding beds. So I'm not really going to go into that, because at the end, there will always be someone who is going to be left disappointed. So that is where we are at currently, and I just hope that things improve, and I still want to wish you all the best. Bye-bye.